And just lastly, on Reform, who are way ahead of you in the polls consistently, you talk of values. One of Reform's MPs, Sarah Pochin, has apologised after she said yesterday, "It drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, full of people who are anything other than white." The Prime Minister told us a couple of weeks ago that some of Reform's plans are racist. Listening to that, do you think some of their politicians are too?
She's only sorry that she's been caught and called out, and she said the quiet bit loud. On Friday afternoon, I went to one of my local secondary schools listening to teenage boys aged between year 7, so around 11, right up to the age of 18, describe their experiences of racism in our capital city, in one of the most diverse cities on earth. And what they are describing and what we have seen on our streets in recent weeks and months is a return of 1970s, 1980s style racism that I thought we had left in the history books. And the only way we are going to defeat this racism is to call it out and confront it for what it is, and for the decent majority of this country to stand against it, as we have always done. I think what she said was a disgrace. I think it was racist, and the deafening silence from her party leader says it all. Reform is a party who think that our flag only belongs to some of us who look like me, not all of us who have built this country, built its success. And let's not forget, when we remember the service and the sacrifice with this poppy, that the people who bled and died for our democracy and our freedom weren't just my grandfather and my great-grandfather who looked like me and worshipped the same God as me. It was people from right across what was then the Empire, now the Commonwealth. People who are Muslim, people who are Sikh, people who are Hindu, people who, look differently than you and I do. And we should remember that, defend it, and fight for what this country stands for. Okay. A decent, respectful and inclusive democracy, the most successful multi-faith democracy in the world. Okay. We stand for that, Reform don't, and that's why they're not fit to govern.
OK, Wes Streeting, thank you.
Sarah Pochin's remarks reflect a deep unease within parts of British politics about multiculturalism and representation, and the fact that she felt comfortable saying it publicly says even more than the words themselves. When a sitting Reform MP admits she's driven mad by adverts that include black and Asian people, it reveals how normalized racial resentment still is in some political circles. Wes Streeting's response, that she said the quiet bit loud, perfectly captures the issue. These views often linger just beneath the surface, disguised behind talk of British identity or representation, but every so often they slip out in plain sight. This isn't just about one MP's prejudice. It's about the coded language that has come to dominate parts of right-wing populism in Britain. The obsession with who appears in adverts, or who represents real Britain, suggests that for some politicians, Britishness is still defined by whiteness. What's especially troubling is how this rhetoric feeds a broader narrative of division, portraying inclusion as a threat and diversity as something to be mocked or resented. In a political climate already charged with debates about immigration, integration, and national identity, Pochin's words aren't a slip-up. They're a signal. They show how the Reform Party, while trying to frame itself as a voice for ordinary Britons, often ends up giving cover to those nostalgic for a Britain that never truly existed. And that's precisely why Streeting's condemnation matters. Because silence, in moments like this, would only legitimize the racism she voiced aloud.
Aisha, is the role relevant in any way at all if it doesn't also include being Deputy Prime Minister? I gather this appointment won't even be in Cabinet. Cabinet, thank you very much.
Yeah. So obviously we saw what happened with Angela Rayner, and it was such a long-running issue, and eventually she left. And I thought, well, obviously nobody could replace Angela from what she's done and what she's contributed to the party. But yes, I do feel that it's still important, the role as deputy leader. And obviously we've had Angela Rayner in the position. Hopefully we're going to get another female elected soon. So yeah, I think it's really important. And obviously you mentioned David Lammy. The position obviously was empty.
Why is it important, Aisha? She has no power, does she?
I think it's more symbolic, but I think it's obviously important as well because, look, as you know, with elections, people win, people lose, and so on. So after the election, we'll see what happens. After Labour's time in government, we'll see what happens. But I think it's still very important to have a deputy leader. It shows up the leadership. It shows that there's another layer of leadership at the top. And I agree with, it's not just with the Labour Party, by the way, across all organisations, it's important to have just lots and lots of different people that you can turn to for support and help. It shouldn't all fall on the leader. And obviously Keir Starmer, he's the Prime Minister as well as the leader of the Labour Party. So there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of things going on. So this is where a deputy leadership position, whoever gets elected, can step up and support Keir as well.
Do you think, Benedict?
I mean, as far as I'm aware, the role of the deputy Labour leaders effectively is just there as a sort of a holding pattern until there's then, in the event that the Labour leader is no longer able to sort of fulfil their duties, that they just sort of sit there and keep things ticking over in a bit of a holding pattern, as I say, until there can actually be an election for a new leader overall. So I think straight off the bat there, you're kind of looking at it and saying, is this a ceremonial role? Is it even that, to be honest, if you're there just to sort of keep the seat warm? But, it is a curious thing, isn't it, when you're considering, as you're saying, that this person isn't even the deputy prime minister, that, what actual function do they have, what actual role do they have? And you would imagine, actually, if it's such an empty role, ultimately the running of the party is going to be taken over by other people anyway, presumably more talented people who have been appointed to more senior cabinet positions, such as, for instance, Foreign Secretary or Home Secretary. I think there is an argument to be made about a deputy leadership role as the sort of token thing. It's something to throw as a bone to a political ally or the leader of a political faction within your own party to sort of placate them a little bit. But of course, that's not even what we have here in the Labour Party, because it's an elected process. It's not even something that can be handed out as a sort of a patronage thing. And so what you end up getting, I think, is just an opportunity to play at politics, which is functionally a bit pointless. I don't think anybody genuinely believes that Lucy Powell is going to become a more important figure in the Labour Party if she becomes deputy leader, just like I don't think anybody is going to look at the deputy leadership and go, well, that's Bridget Phillipson's primary role over education. So it's one of those things where you can kind of look at it and go, I suppose for the technicality, it's not a bad thing to have, but does there really have to be the whole rigmarole of an election if they're going to move on and get another elected leader so soon anyway, if they actually lose the leader? I'm not sure.
I mean, within all of this, Aisha, don't you think people are looking at it and going, well, why are you concentrating on this internal stuff rather than concentrating on what's going wrong in the country?
I mean, look, as soon as Angela Rayner resigned, it triggered an election. And I think it's important. I mean, I'm a Labour Party member. I was allowed to vote. And I think it's important to allow members to have a say as well. And obviously, I keep going back to, the sort of things that overshadowed Angela Rayner's last couple of weeks in position, which was really sad. So I think in many ways, this has allowed us to be part of the process, the members, that is. And I think whoever gets elected, whether it's Bridget or Lucy, I think both of the women bring a lot to the table. They both have held positions in the shadow cabinet. They both have a wealth of experience, and it's good to see another female in a leadership position in politics. I think it can only be a positive thing. And obviously, as your guest has mentioned, that it is ceremonial. It's almost, what's the point? But I think it's important because there were so many damaging headlines. There was so many negative things and negative feelings and so on. So I think in many ways this has brought a lot of people together. When you attend events together, you talk to each other, Labour Party members and so on. So I think in many ways this has really helped some members move on, and hopefully it's being announced today. So we'll find out who's been successful. So that's going to be interesting as well.
Okay, Aisha, Benedict, thank you both very much indeed.